system. And so, or a different way of saying this, which just is what I said in my book, the record skip across the kind of people understood the natural state of the free market is deflation. That might be deflation because we use things that give us more value. In the free market, when you said it gives us more value, we trade with people we don't like to gain more value, and both of us win. We don't need to be told to do it. We just naturally do it because it gives us more value. And that competition constantly competes. So the only way to be able to create a monopoly inside of that system is to regulate it, to stop the free market, right? To stop the natural process from happening. And if the natural process happened, and I'm not saying if, because it is happening on Bitcoin, you have the natural extension of that natural process is you have 8 billion people in service of 8 billion people. And the amount of ideas that you remove people from the extraction where they can't even live, where they can't think like this, and you move them to an area of contribution, everyone wins. Everyone wins. Add 7.5 billion minds to ideas that compete for us in service of us. And that's what Bitcoin's doing.
Yeah, it's super beautiful. And like I think this is why it's so hard to grok for people, because it's almost too simple. We do things without any violence. We remove all the violence and everything gets better. We cooperate.
What ends up happening though is it's because the idea is so profound and it's never existed before. It creates a cognitive dissonance in our brain, right? And it does for every single person going through Bitcoin, including me and including you. When you first understand Bitcoin, so if you use that cognitive dissonance, I wrote this tweet the other day, or Noster post the other day, that said that cognitive dissonance of the free market is deflationary, then creates this break against all of your previous past. And what your brain does is tries to defend. Just about everyone I know is still trapped in some regard in the other system, right? And a lot of Bitcoiners are still trapped in the other system, and they're measuring price go up, and what they're doing is actually strengthening the derivative instrument of Bitcoin by thinking prices go up and Bitcoin goes up faster than prices. So so if you just think through that, these two systems are incompatible. The free market is incompatible over a long time with an inflationary based system because it has to steal more and more and it has to centralize more and more. Like two opposite systems, right? And so if you're strengthening the fiat system by pricing in fiat, then you're strengthening the system that's extracting from you. And eventually, like if everybody did that, they won't. And this the won't is because what you said before, Knut, is what protects Bitcoin? Us. We are Bitcoin, right? And there's too many of us that already have seen and behind the veil, and are building the next, right? And that inflation extracts more from other nations than it does the US. So those countries have to fail faster. But most people in those countries want the US dollars.
Can you just explain why inflation is necessary? Like,
so a credit-based system has to have inflation because deflation is the natural state of the world. So it has to have inflation to counteract the deflation because deflation would kill the credit-based system. It has to. So it's a mathematical certainty. And then inflation has to keep on rising to be able to pay back the debt. It's just a piece of paper that's worthless. And eventually it has to resolve. Why the US dollar lasts so long is they keep finding tricks to be able to extend its life. First, take it off the gold reserve and then tie it to energy in the form of oil, right? And now they're likely going to tie it to Bitcoin, right? And to be able to remove the debt in Bitcoin terms and start there later, a lot later. Right. Because people will give up their self-custodial, they'll give up or some people would, if enough people, let's just imagine in thinking through these things, it's worth thinking about our human action, right? And what most people do, whether they say they'll do it or not, right? So today, everybody's yelling at the government, how dare you, how dare you, how dare you? Well, they would never vote for a deflationary spiral because every bank would collapse, every house, they own houses, all those houses would be worth zero or $100 because you would have no financial system. The whole thing would fail. So they yell at these people. Well, they make it stronger. All of these people, so there is no they, it's only us. And those incentives. So what would those people do in this new system? They're more than likely to trust other centralized actors because it would appear that they were getting richer than other people in Bitcoin. And that trust, well, they would all make, like the US dollars have the idea, and you'd realize it's going to come into a different layer. Then those layers are going to be increasingly important in the next fight. If it was only that, and it was open to people to see, and everybody were trading on this other thing, and not very many people could trade on this, then eventually the government, being that big, because it was would come and find those people and stop that. So it has to move up into liquid lightning, whether it's an interoperability layer that is on top of that. And for two reasons, it has to move that. Because if you didn't have the interoperability layer on top of that, then people would try to force changes onto the base layer that could protect and misunderstand something that could end leading up to breaking Bitcoin, right? It wouldn't harden, right? They would introduce a change that could produce risk onto Bitcoin from a base layer change. So you move the interoperability layer up into Lightning and everything else. Now people can trade with it all over the world. So I donate my time to a lot of conferences or podcasts to be able to move this out. But sometimes, just to be able to actually almost stop all the demand on my time, I hired an agent that just kind of speaking gigs, but I charged a lot for it because it's not something I want to spend my time doing all the time. So a personal version of what you're saying. So what was the fee that I wanted to charge if I said yes and I was free to do it? The fee was half a Bitcoin. So now my fee is in Canadian dollars, like almost $70,000 at $70,000 an hour, right? And so that and that maybe if I want to do some, maybe I move it a quarter Bitcoin, right? If I don't want to do it, maybe I move it up. But yeah, that fee will come down and down and down if I want to do that. It's backed. It's by $400 trillion of debt. So you probably have a mortgage on your house. Or as somebody said to me, I have not long enough Bitcoin, right? Because I have a house, right? But you probably have a mortgage on your house. That $400 trillion that it's backed by all of that debt, and I'm not talking unfunded liabilities. I'm just talking the known liabilities. That $400 trillion is already insolvent. It would take 12,873,000 years, paying back $1 a second, pay back that debt. So you know this, we talk about it all the time. But if you just say it's insolvent, it's insolvent, it's insolvent, it's insolvent, but then carry to the logical thing, that means your house isn't worth the same price. Because if that debt is insolvent, right, and your house is on top of that, if the debt ever became insolvent, your house is worth pennies. You couldn't nonsense, measure it in the nonsense without taking all of the variables into account. So they're actually reinforcing the nonsense. So, but in purchasing power, and all Bitcoin has to do is stay decentralized and secure for this to happen. In today's purchasing power of a Bitcoin in time is $43 million against today's balance sheet. Now add another variable, and this is probably a bigger variable, and this is where this heals the world. You could never spend that, ever. You couldn't come close to spending that ever, because in this world, prices will always fall. So the purchasing power of that 43 million